With the tide coming in quickly, it's time to get off the mud. The best area for finds at the low water mark is now submerged. And there's not much point of searching higher on the beach. It's mostly all modern junk.
Ray, you should go first, I think.
My first day on the mud's not been great for artifacts.
Yeah,
1879.
With only a handful of modern scrap metal and a few battered old finds between us.
A couple of musket balls and a modern 20-pence coin.
I'd like to find a few more coins, maybe something a little older than 1992. I'd like to break maybe into the 1800s, a little earlier. You could go weeks without finding a really good find, but you always get lucky. Somebody always gets lucky. Maybe it'll be me.
With the next low tide after dark tonight, I've got 24 hours to wait before I can get back down to the mud in daylight. Tomorrow, we're heading right into the heart of the City of London, where I've been promised the artifacts should be a lot older. There's still hours to wait before the tide drops low enough that I can get back to the mud and start treasure hunting again. So I'm heading to the Museum of London to find out exactly what the regulations are. I need to know if I can keep whatever I might find. I'm being taken behind the scenes to meet the curator in charge of handling all of the Mudlark's finds. So what's the process for finds when they're brought in for recording?
When people find things on the Thames foreshore, they'll have their permit to search on the foreshore, and part of that permit means that you have to bring your finds to the Museum of London for recording. Mm-hmm. If you think they're 300 years old or older, then if there are any that we are particularly interested in at the museum, maybe because we don't have an example in our collection, we would approach the finder and see if they would consider either donating it or selling it to us. And then if we were happy for the rest of the objects to go back, they would be returned to the finder.
Oh. The Museum of London has thousands of artifacts donated by the Mudlarks. So many, there's not enough room to display them all.
Muriel is showing me all of these great finds that the Mudlarks have made, and she opens this drawer that's absolutely chock full of toys from the 15 and 1600s. And it's just amazing the stuff that's in there. Toy pistols, toy cannons. The Mudlarks have really changed the way history has looked at the childhood through the Middle Ages. Some of the finds are crazy. It's just kids playing with toy cannons that actually shot, toy pistols that actually shot things.
Over the last 30 years, the Mudlarks have made a really important contribution to the study of London history through the sheer volume and variety of finds that they've discovered from the Thames foreshore.
I just finished an amazing afternoon with Muriel at the Museum of London, and seeing all of the stuff that the Mudlarks have dug over the last 30 years and have turned in, I want to go to the foreshore right now. I'm hyped. There's so much stuff out there to be found.
So now I know, anything and everything over 300 years old has to be shown to the museum, along with any gold or silver from any period of history. I can sell or donate my finds to a museum, but by law, I can't sell them privately. These are the same rules I work with when I come on my detecting trips elsewhere in England.
I actually have 7 Celtic gold coins that I've found in the last 6 years. And none of them are extremely valuable, but I wouldn't trade or sell any of them, so it's about the history. Touching an object and realizing the last person to touch that was walking the earth with Christ. I started detecting as I lost my high school ring in 1981 on a military base in California, and I went and bought a little $50 metal detector to try and find it. Never found mine, but I found hundreds since.
"24 hours after our last riverbank adventure, Ian and Andy are getting tooled up.
You got your boots in? I always think I forgot, you know that.
And this time, alongside their metal detectors, they're bringing picks and shovels.
There's a lot of erosion there, isn't it? So I think it's going to be a good spot.
After what seems like a long wait, I'm finally back on the mud. New location and new rules.
We're on a different area of foreshore today, so it's going to be different rules here. With your standard permit, this is an eyes-only area, which is still okay because there's lots of erosion, and if you look behind you, you can kind of see how much the foreshore's eroding. So quite a lot of people just come down and quite easy to find things eyes only. Safety-wise, pretty much the same as before when you were down. Just be careful of sharp objects. You've got your gloves on, so there's not a lot of chance of getting cut off here with the tide, but obviously you've always got to keep an eye on the tide just to make sure you're not going to get cut off. And we've got an hour and a half to a low tide, so that should be plenty of time to get some goodies.
The mudlarks are allowed to dig, detect, and scrape on the north side of the Thames River. What I have is a guest permit, which allows me to detect up to 3 inches and scrape on the south side of the Thames River. On the north side of the Thames River, it's eyes only. I can't do.
Ian and Andy aim to get down to the undisturbed layers of the mud where the best preserved artifacts are likely to be found. To do that, they choose to dig, but they've only got an hour, so it's critical they get the positioning right.
So Ian, you and Andy are going to dig a hole today. What's that involve, and how do you figure out where to put that hole?
Well, basically, it's kind of random, but you just got to try and read the foreshore a little bit to sort of see areas that haven't been disturbed and that just look, that you might have a better chance of. I mean, like this patch here where your boot's on,
okay,
that looks like it's been disturbed. It's got modern rubble and stuff in it.
Okay.
Whereas this little patch here, I'm just looking at this piece of tile here, just looks like it's sat there. The way it's impacted into the foreshore, it's sort of crumbled in situ there. That kind of looks like it's sat there undisturbed.
Already I can see this area of the riverbank is different to yesterday's. There's less junk metal, and the place is littered with broken clay pipes.
It's a clay pipe bowl, and I'll have to talk to Ian and see how old it is. I would imagine late 16, early 17s from the size.
Ian is amazing at identifying finds, even when they're covered with mud. He's been coming down to the river since he was a kid, and over the years he's seen just about every kind of artifact there is. The other mudlarks often rely on Ian's expertise to tell them what they've found.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, a memorial pipe. That dates to about 1740. You've got the Prince of Wales feathers in the middle.
Yeah, okay.
That's good. Order the garter around the outside. Yeah, quite interesting.
Nice. What I was really surprised about was the amount of pipe stems and pipe bowls that are down there. They're like the cigarette butts of the 15 and 1600s. They're literally everywhere.
That's good. Another 18th.
In the early 1600s, tobacco was an expensive and rare commodity, but it was so fashionable and addictive, everybody smoked. A few flakes of tobacco in tiny pipes. By 1620, 30,000 kilograms of tobacco was imported from Virginia. The price went down, and the pipes got bigger.
Hi guys, 9:46, officially low tide.
Mudlarking is so not like treasure hunting on land. Knowing the tide is coming in puts you under pressure to come up with the goods.
With any treasure hunting, it's the thrill of the hunt. It's the potential of what's out there. It's hard to describe the feeling. I don't know if it's like gambling or drug addiction or whatever, but it really is that kind of high when you find something that you think, God, nobody's touched that in hundreds of years.
Something's going on, and there's that buzz that maybe, just maybe, something might turn up.
I just don't know what you're going to find on the day. Lead token I've just set up, quite a nice one. Probably about 17th century. I mean, there's so many varieties of these. I mean, they're lovely. It's at least if I've had one of these, I've had something today.
Now we're getting warmer. Pins in the mud. This is a real mudlarking inside tip. Where you find pins, you often find coins.
Yeah, I would imagine this has got to be a great place to scrape. That's why the mudlarks love it down here.
Lightweight pins and coins sometimes get caught up in the river current, swirling around together. Then, when the tide goes out, they get dumped together in the mud.
And I can't tell if they're copper or what metal they're made of.
They could date from any time in the last 700 years. They might seem like insignificant things now, but in the past, pins were everywhere. They quite literally held us together. In the days before zippers, studs, and snaps, just about every piece of ladies' attire was pinned. By the 1860s, both the U.S. and Britain were consuming 20 million pins per day. No wonder the mudlarks find so many of them. My hot tip that pins leads to coins didn't pan out, but I found my own personal gold mine, a rich seam of what looks to me like really ancient stuff.
There's an entire layer in here of the old tile and all kinds of stuff in here, so.
If I want to get them out, I'm going to have to work fast. The tide's coming in quickly. I'm climbing under this dock at the water's edge, and it's jam-packed with artifacts, and I can see something poking out.
So this piece of leather's hanging down, and I see it, and it looks like a shoe, and I'm thinking, God, how could this be a shoe? If it's, I mean, it looks old, several hundred years at least. How could it be that well preserved? And I called Mackie over to come help me try and get this thing out, and I was really excited as he's in there scraping, trying to get the shoe out.
It's definitely a shoe.
Mackie's having to work quickly. The tide's almost around our feet.
Maybe even chip out a little of the stuff behind it, you know, back right in here to get, there you go.